Okay. Hello everyone. We are going to start with a new chapter in physics, and that's kinetic theory of gases. As the name itself suggests, this will be concerned with gases and the kinetic theory that is involved. Okay. So what do we actually mean by kinetic theory of gases? Kinetic theory of gases basically means we are going to study the theory about gases. Okay. Now gases basically display certain properties, and these properties are concerned with their pressure, with their volume, with the temperature that they are associated with. So gases display a lot of behaviors, and these behaviors are dependent more or less on all these factors. They will be dependent on the pressure, they will be dependent on the temperature, they will be dependent on the number of moles as well. So here we will talk about the ideal gas equation. The ideal gas equation here is PV is equal to nRT. So what do we mean by PV is equal to nRT? We mean here the pressure of the gas, the volume of the gas, the number of moles of the gas. This is basically the gas constant, and that's basically equal to 8.314 joules per Kelvin per mole. Okay, so this is a gas constant that will be applicable for all ideal gases. Then we have the temperature T. This is basically the temperature in Kelvin. Okay, you will never take temperatures in degrees centigrade or any other form when we are talking about PV is equal to nRT. Okay, so here we have PV is equal to nRT, and this is a gas constant. So ideal gas always obeys this equation. Ideal gas will always obey this equation. This equation is always obeyed by ideal gas. Okay, so what is an ideal gas? Ideal gas is something with which all the real gases will find some correlation to. Okay, so real gases obey it to a good approximation. All the real gases that you have, basically all the gases. Okay, so real gas here means that it will somehow be very close to the. One second, I will just adjust the camera here. Okay, so the real gas basically obeys it to a good approximation. All real gases will obey the ideal gas equation to a good approximation. The thing approximation here means that it will be very close to it. Okay, although the values might not be experimentally absolutely the same values, but they will be somehow very close to it. Okay, so real gases obey it to a good approximation at low density. Whenever gases have a very low density, they will obey it to a good approximation. However, when the density becomes higher, okay, then the deviation starts. Okay, so if the density becomes higher, then the deviation starts. So till the time the density is low, all real gases will behave more or less like an ideal gas to a good approximation. The moment the density becomes less, okay, the deviation starts. Okay, so this is about ideal gases. Okay, real gases obey to a good approximation at low temperatures, at low density, but deviate when the density is increased. If you increase the density of the real gas, then you will find deviations in this equation. This is the ideal gas equation. It has come from combining both Charles and Boyle's law. Okay, so we will study about Charles' law and Boyle's law as well, but for the time being, this is the ideal gas equation. Now, when we start the theory of kinetic theory of gases, there are certain assumptions that we make. Okay, and these assumptions are basically what theory of gases. Okay, so there are certain assumptions of kinetic theory of gases. What are the assumptions made? The gases are made up of molecules moving randomly in all directions. We all know that if we have gas filled in a container, it will be making all these molecules will be randomly moving in all directions. There is no specified direction of the movement of these molecules. So if we have gas filled in an enclosed container or even in open, the gas molecules are randomly moving in all directions. Okay, so all gases are basically made up of molecules. Okay, and these molecules are moving just randomly in any direction or in all directions. Okay, now the size of a molecule is much smaller than the average separation between the molecules. If you consider the size, see, there will be an average separation. Okay, so depending on how dense the gas is, if you happen to have a piston out here and if you happen to compress it, the difference, the average separation will become smaller. Okay, the gases will become more, the gas molecules will tend to become more closer. However, the size of a molecule is much smaller. We can actually, so there is an average distance between the molecules of these gases. Alright, So all of these molecules have an average distance amongst them, and their size is very much smaller as compared to the average distance. This is the assumption that we are making. So size of the molecules is much smaller than the average separation between the molecules. The average distance that is there between the molecules, the size of the molecules is much smaller than that, right? The molecules exert no force on each other, okay? There is absolutely no force exerted by the molecules on each other. The molecules exert no force on each other or on the walls of the container except during collision, okay? So they do not exert any force on each other or on the walls of the container except when they are colliding, okay? So when they are colliding, then they will exert a force on the walls of the container. So apart from collision, so if I have a molecule located here, it is not going to exert any force until unless it hits the container. So when it hits the container, there will be a force that will be exerted. So the molecules exert no force on each other or on the walls of the container except during collision. So when the collision happens either with themselves or with the walls of the container, then the dynamics might change. Okay, so they will exert a force only when they happen to collide with the container. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, some more things that we need to consider here. We study as we have studied. We will study average properties of gases. In kinetic theory of gases, we are just studying there or trying to understand their average properties. Okay, so these average properties are basically not micro properties. Okay, they are basically macro properties. Okay, so these are basically macro properties. That means these are properties which are on a large scale. Okay, not that we are studying the individual properties of individual molecules. So in kinetic theory of gases, we are trying to understand the macro properties and not the micro properties. Okay, this theory proved all its predecessing laws. Okay, there were a lot of laws, as you know. In gas we have Charles' law, then we have Boyle's law. Okay, then we have the gas equation, which we try and make out of combining these two laws. So all these laws were formulated even before Dalton proposed his theory of atoms. Okay, all these laws were given even before Dalton's theory. But this kinetic theory of gases, if we happen to just consider the average properties, then these all these laws which were formulated or which were proposed even before Dalton's theory, they all fall in place. Okay, so this theory proved all its preceding laws. So this theory actually proved all its preceding laws. So in 1661 there was this Boyle's law. Okay, in 1661 Boyle's law was proposed by Boyle, and what it states is that the volume of a given mass of gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. Okay, so volume, what was Boyle's law? Volume of a given mass of gas, at a constant temperature, volume of a given mass of gas at a constant temperature is inversely proportional to its temperature. So the volume of a given mass of gas at a constant temperature is inversely proportional to its pressure. I'm extremely sorry. This is inversely proportional to its pressure. Okay, so volume of a given mass of gas at a constant temperature is inversely proportional to the pressure. How will we plot this graph? The graph will look something like this. Inversely proportional means what? If the volume increases, the pressure decreases. If the volume decreases, the pressure will increase. Okay, so here we have, okay, when the volume is decreasing, see, the pressure is increasing. When the volume is increasing, the pressure is decreasing. Now why do we have two lines? We have a dotted line basically, and we have this theoretical line. So this line is basically representing the theoretical line. It is a theoretical line. So when we plot the theoretical line and we plot the dotted line, this is basically the experimental line, actual values, experimental line. So we see that they are almost more or less in agreement with each other, very close. Okay, so they are in too close an agreement. We can say that theoretically and practically it is almost the same. So these are some certain variations, a very little variation is there, but we can neglect that variation. Okay, so the theoretical value and the experimental value of these two graphs is almost the same. This basically is an isothermal process. Okay, so when we verify Boyle's law with the experimental values, we see that their values are almost the same. Okay, now we will move on to a certain variation with temperature. What we have assumed here is that the process is isothermal, which means that throughout the process of measuring both the dimensions of pressure and temperature, the system has a constant display. Okay, this Boyle's law is. But when we do the same thing with temperature variations, here the temperature is varied. Okay, so let's say this is the pressure, and again this is the same, that is volume and pressure are plotted. Now let's say this is a temperature T, let's say we'll name it T1, then this is T2, this is T2, and let's say this is T0 and T0. Okay, so when we look at the temperature, when we make changes to the temperature, when we lower down the temperature, we see that the variation increases between the experimental value. So let's say this is the experimental value. The variation between the experimental and this is the experimental value, and this is basically the theoretical value. Okay, so here there were no deviations or very less deviation. But when you lower down the temperature, so T1 is very less temperature. When you lower down the temperature, the variation between the two graphs increases, which means that the variation between the theoretical and the practical or experimental values increases. However, when you increase the temperature and plot the graph, you will see that the variation has decreased. Again, when you increase the temperature and plot the graph, you will see that the variation has decreased. So as and when you keep on increasing the temperature, you will notice that the variation is decreasing. Okay, so the pressure and the volume, when you keep on increasing the temperature, you will find out that the variation is decreasing. However, at low temperatures there will be deviations. Okay, so when temperature was changed, law is basically theoretical. Okay, so high temperature gas laws are acceptable. So at very high temperatures the gas laws are acceptable. Okay, gas laws are in close agreement when the temperatures are very high, but at the same time we can say that gas laws become almost invalid. Gas laws become almost invalid at low temperatures. So when we reduce the temperature, the gas laws become almost invalid. Okay, so this is something that kinetic theory of gases basically is in conformation with Charles' law or Boyle's law, whatever was framed before that. Okay, so it confirmed all its predecessing laws. Okay, and we notice that there are certain variations to it. When the process is isothermal, okay, you will find that there is a close proximity to both of them. However, when you increase or rather decrease the temperature, you will find a greater variation between the actual graph that is plotted theoretically and the experimental graph. Okay, so the variation will increase. However, as you keep on increasing, so gas laws, more precisely the Boyle's law, is acceptable when we take the temperature of the gas to a higher value. However, when we keep on decreasing the temperature, the variation between the experimental and the actual the theoretical values increases. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, sorry about that. So basically we were discussing about John Dalton. Now John Dalton was the first to propose the theory of atoms, and this happened way back in 1803. Then after that, Maxwell and Boltzmann basically proposed the kinetic theory, and this was done in 1873. Okay, so what was the kinetic theory? Maxwell and Boltzmann basically stated that all properties of gases are due to motion of molecules. So in gases, the motion of molecules is pretty much constant and continuous. Okay, so all the properties that basically gases display with regards to the pressure, volume or temperature, okay, is primarily due to the continuous motion of its molecules. Okay, so what was the assumption made? There was one assumption which stands out amongst all the assumptions that we discussed. So we discussed quite a number of assumptions for kinetic theory of gases. Okay, now the primary assumption amongst them all is that intermolecular force is absent in ideal gases. Intermolecular force means that supposingly we have two molecules, there wouldn't be any kind of intermolecular force pulling these two molecules. Okay. See, intermolecular force, we know that in solids it is the strongest. So solids are compactly packed because the molecules are having an intermolecular force. So all these molecules will be having an intermolecular force amongst them, whether diagonally, whether they are placed straight, whether they are placed up and down. So all these intermolecular forces will be acting and compactly packing the solid. In liquids, there is intermolecular forces, however a little weaker than the solids. Okay, so in liquids also we have intermolecular forces, but a little weaker than the solids. But in gases we hardly have any kind of intermolecular force. Okay, so the first and primary or the most important assumption while studying kinetic theory of gases is that gases have very weak or almost negligible intermolecular force of attraction. Okay, so assumption is that intermolecular force is absolutely absent in case of ideal gases. Okay, all right. Now we always study what we study the average properties of gases. So it is not possible for us to do a study of all the molecules, their motion. So as we have seen that basically if there is a small molecule which has a velocity v, and due to some impact or collision its velocity changes, obviously there will be a small molecule of its same size which will acquire the same velocity in the same direction post this change. So what happens is that the velocity is there, although it is shared by another molecule. So the velocity is not dying out, or the velocity is not changing for all the molecules. So if there is a velocity change for one molecule, there will be another molecule which will be taking over its velocity, and this change that has been brought, some other molecule will be following the same change. So if we look into so it is not possible for us to continuously and randomly pick up these molecules and understand their behaviors and patterns in terms of various aspects which can be measured. Okay. So we study average properties. In case of gases, we will always study the average properties of gases, because properties of molecules change due to constant collisions. So there is a constant collision that is happening amongst molecules, because of which their properties are changing, and these collisions are elastic. Okay, so these collisions are basically elastic, and there is a constant change that is happening. Okay, we have understood this. All right, now we will move on to this. What is mean free path? Okay, very important. This is where your chapter actually starts. Whatever we were discussing till now was basically a little of more of theory. Okay, now the calculation part starts in your chapter. So what is mean free path? It is the average distance traveled by a molecule between two successive collisions. Okay, so let's say this is a molecule. Okay, now this molecule travels here, it gets collided with this, it travels here. So this is, let's say, lambda 1. Distance traveled lambda 2, again it collides with this one, so its direction changes, so this will be lambda 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are different directions in which it is moving. So mean free path is what? It is the average distance traveled by a molecule between two successive collisions. So if the molecule is encountering two successive collisions, what is the average distance that has been traveled by it? So mean free path is basically the average distance traveled by the molecules between two successive collisions. So let's say n is the total number of collisions that the molecule has faced or the molecule has encountered, and these are the basically the lengths of the path of each of them. Okay, so let's say it has encountered n collisions, and lambda 1 is the first path, lambda 2 is the second part, and so on and so forth. If we keep on adding them and divided by n, we will get the average or the mean free path. Okay, so it is the average distance traveled by a molecule between two successive collisions. So between two successive collisions, what is the average distance that the molecule has traveled, and that becomes your mean free path. Okay, right, now we have average relaxation time. Average relaxation time is what? Average relaxation time is basically average time period between two successive collisions. So if there are two successive collisions, there has to be a time period between them. So the average of that is known as the average relaxation time. So average time period between two successive collisions. It means average time period between two successive collisions. For example, we have the mean free path. If we keep on adding all these time periods and divide by n, so this will give the average relaxation time. Is this understood? See, if I say that this is a molecule, okay, and the time for which it is in this path is basically t1. Again, the time for which this is in this path is t2. The time for which this is in this path is t3, and so on and so forth. So this T1 is basically the relaxation period beyond which its velocity will again change. Beyond which its velocity will again change. Beyond this, the velocity will again change. So if I add on these times and I divide it by the number of collisions, I will get the average relaxation time. Average relaxation time, basically the time period between two successive collisions. Okay, so the molecule is not relaxing. Okay, what it means here is that the molecule is not undergoing a collision. Okay, during this time period, when the molecule moves from one point to another, before collision, what is the time that it spends? Okay, it is not relaxed, it is in a moving state, and that's the reason it will collide with another particle. So it is just the time. Okay, so this time is basically the time spent between two successive collisions. Okay, so the average relaxation time is basically the average time period between two successive collisions, and that's how we calculate it. So if you consider all the aspects that we are going to study in terms of gases or kinetic theory of gases, all these aspects will be primarily on the average properties, not on individual properties. Okay, generally in mechanics what we study is individual properties in terms of motion, but here it is not possible. And secondly, it supports, okay, the theory that we have for ideal gases, and the practical derivations that we have are almost matching up. So we will always study the average properties of gases and not their individual properties. Okay, I hope this makes sense and it is clear to you. You can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, we'll study some more properties out here for gases. Okay, now they do not, so these are basically properties of gases, and more or less we are aware of these properties. Okay, so but still this is in sync with the kinetic theory. So gases do not have a definite shape, we all know this, right? They take the shape of the container or volume of their own. So gases will never have a definite shape, they will always take the shape of the container. They do not have a volume of their own as well. Okay, they do not have a shape or volume of their own. Okay, occupy the whole volume of the container. When you actually put a liquid, it will occupy some part of the container. You put more liquid, then it will acquire more part of the container, and maybe at a point of time it will be almost fill. Okay, but when you fill a gas, okay, if you fill a very small amount of gas, so let's say this is an enclosed chamber, no amount of gas is allowed to escape, and I burn one incense stick out here. So this incense stick will fill the entire container equally. I burn another incense stick and another one. No matter how many incense sticks I burn, this gas will basically fill up. Okay, so even if it is a very small amount of gas, still it will fill the entire enclosed container. If you increase the amount of gas, still it will fill it completely. No matter how much you increase it, it will keep on filling the container. Okay, so the entire container, enclosed container, is filled by a gas. Okay, so this basically means that they occupy the whole volume of the container. Clear? Okay, now molecules continuously bombard the walls of the container. So they are continuously bombarding the walls of the container. These molecules are continuously bombarding the walls of the container. Okay, so molecules continuously bombard on the walls of the container, and their change in momentum gives impulse to the walls of the container. So obviously there will be a change in momentum. Okay, so if let's say you fill a balloon, okay, you will feel that force, right? You will feel that force. So where is this force coming from? A balloon will give you that force. When you try to press it, you will feel that force in your hands, right? Where is this force coming from? Basically these molecules are colliding and going back. So there is a rate of change of momentum. Whenever there is a rate of change of momentum, a force will be applicable. We all know that force is equal to change in momentum, or rather rate of change of momentum. So this will be applicable. So bombarding on the walls of the container and their change in momentum gives impulse to the walls of the container. So this is basically giving the impulse to the walls of the container. It creates that force. Okay, rate of change of momentum per unit area on the wall of the container is termed as the pressure exerted by the gas. The rate of change of momentum which is taking place on the walls of the container, the rate of change of momentum which is taking place on the walls of the container is basically termed as the pressure exerted by the gas. It is the pressure which is exerted by the gas. Okay, is this clear? Understood? Okay. So these are not assumptions of kinetic theory of gases. These are actual properties of gases, and we have more or less studied it in earlier classes. All right. Now, what is the theory, or what is the history behind the kinetic theory of gases? So the first person who came up with the idea of atom, we all know, he is regarded as the father of discovery of atom. So atomic theory, John Dalton. This atomic theory, or rather that each and every element is made up of atoms, was proposed. Just one moment. Okay. All right, good morning everyone. We will continue with the kinetic theory of gases, and we left off at some point yesterday, and we'll just continue with that. Okay, so there is a little bit of theory that we need to have a very deep understanding on. Okay, so we have here kinetic theory of gases. All collisions between two molecules or between a molecule and a wall are perfectly elastic, which means that the momentum, we all know what is an elastic collision and what is an inelastic collision, right? So all collisions are perfectly elastic, which means both the momentum and the kinetic energy remains conserved. So all collisions between two molecules or between a molecule and a wall, so whether the collisions are between two molecules or between a molecule and a wall, they are going to remain perfectly elastic. Okay. So also the time spent during a collision is negligibly small. So the gas molecule will just collide and then separate. Okay. See, the lesser is the time spent, the more is the force exerted. If you understand, the rate of change of momentum is basically force, right? So if the time spent is less, then obviously the force exerted will be more. Okay. So all collisions between two molecules or between a molecule and a wall are perfectly elastic. Now, if you say that the force will be more, then this will be a contradiction to the kinetic theory of gases, right? So understand, the molecule's mass is too less out here. Okay. Although the time taken is very less for the collision to be, or the impact of the collision to be distributed, but the mass is also very less, and hence the momentum is less, and hence the force will be less. Okay. Now the molecules obey Newton's laws of motion, so they will obey Newton's laws of motion. Whatever laws are applicable with respect to momentum are perfectly there. Okay, I'll just have a change here made for viewing this part of the board. Okay, what else is there? When a gas is left, okay, when a gas is left for a sufficient time, it comes to a steady state. So when you are not fidgeting with the gas, let's say there is a vessel and you have kept the gas in it for some time. So basically you have, this is basically gas, okay, and you have kept the gas in there for some time. Okay, so when a gas is left for a sufficient time, it comes to a steady state. It comes to a steady state. The density and the distribution of molecules with different velocities are independent of position, direction and time. Okay, so the density of the molecules, the velocity of the molecules, the position, everything and the time all remain intact. Okay, is this understood? I'll just have this above. This certainly needs some amount of discussion, so I will just illustrate what do we mean by this point. Okay, so what exactly do we mean by this point? Say, let's say we have a gas. So let's say we have a container out here. Okay, and this is covered. Okay, so when a gas is left for a sufficient time, we are not actually kind of moving it here and there, it's just there, the gas molecules. For a sufficient time, it comes to a steady state. So it has come to a steady state. Okay, the density and the distribution of molecules with different velocities are independent. So let's say we have approximately here, let's say this is 1 centimeter cubic. Okay, if I say this is 1 centimeter cubic and we have approximately 3 into 10 to the power of 19 molecules. See, this is something that I am deriving from Avogadro's number. Okay, it is basically 6.02, but I'm just saying hypothetically, let's say this is 1 centimeter of the gas, and this 1 centimeter cubic of the gas has approximately 3 into 10 to the power of 19 molecules. Okay, we have another 1 centimeter cubic of the gas at this place, and what happens is this will also have the same number of molecules. Okay, if you pay attention to what is being said here, when a gas is left for a sufficient time, it comes to a steady state. Steady state means that the density and the distribution of molecules. So density is what? How many number of molecules are there? Mass is obviously very less. Okay, so the density is distribution of density is dependent on what? Mass and volume. If we have kept the same volume, we will have the same mass, which means that the number of molecules are also going to be the same. For a given mass of gas, the number of molecules will also be the same. So the density and the distribution of molecules with different velocities are independent of position. Now we have talked about the density. Okay, so density is taken care of. Distribution of molecules. Okay, now the distribution of molecules will be such that some molecules will be, let's say, moving in the x direction, some molecules will be moving in the y direction, some molecules will be moving in the z direction. Okay, clear? So let's say we have some 400 odd molecules moving in the x direction, and we have some 400 molecules moving in the y direction, we have some 400 odd molecules moving in the z direction, and in between all the other set of molecules. We will have the same thing out here as well, the same set of approximately 400 molecules moving in these three directions. Okay, that's how it is. The number of molecules which will be moving in these directions is going to remain the same. Okay, distribution of molecules with different velocities are independent of position, direction and time. So this will be the position, direction. Now they are moving in this direction. These set of molecules will be moving in this direction. These set of molecules will be moving in this direction. You will have some other molecules moving in different directions. Similarly, those same number of molecules will be moving in this direction. Okay. Now what happens with the velocities when they collide? So this mass is so huge and the number of molecules are so huge that the collision basically, so let's say we have a very small volume. Okay, we have taken this small volume delta V of the gas. Okay, and we have, let's say, one molecule. We are just considering one molecule out here which has a speed in certain direction. So let's say this molecule has a speed in certain direction and it happens to collide with another molecule. So what will happen? Its velocity will change. So let's say the velocity now changes to V dash, okay, after collision. So what will happen next? Now there will be some other molecule in this same volume delta V which will acquire a velocity of this after collision. Okay, so there will be some other molecule which will acquire this velocity after collision. Okay, so there will be another molecule in this same volume delta V which will acquire a velocity of V after collision. There will be some other molecule which will acquire the same velocity after collision. Is this understood? So by and large what happens is that the velocity of all these molecules will remain constant. Okay, so yes, the velocity changes after the impact, but what happens after the change, after the impact? The velocity definitely is changing, but what happens after the impact or what happens after the change? Is there going to be a significant change involved here? No, the velocity will be acquired by some other particle and some other particle will take up its velocity. So if you consider, if you average it out, okay, on a macroscopic view, if you average it out, it all remains the same. So there is no particular or huge change in a gas, although there is a continuous movement of molecules. Okay, but the average of all these velocities in a steady state of the gas is going to remain the same until unless you are making some changes with respect to pressure or maybe volume or maybe temperature. The average will be the same. So irrespective of continuous collisions, irrespective of continuous change in momentum, the average will be the same. Okay, I'm sorry. So this is basically the kinetic theory of gases, on the basis of which certain assumptions are made. These are certain assumptions which are important, and these assumptions should be in place, and you should have a deep understanding of these assumptions for kinetic theory of gases. Okay, next we will deal with other aspects of it.